Welcome back to Ryan's Game Quest, and this morning Nintendo finally announced the Nintendo Switch 2, the successor and follow-up, of course, to the Nintendo Switch. And they didn't provide a whole lot of direct details in this initial teaser, but they did provide a lot for us to discuss and talk about. So without any hesitation, let's dive right in. So the Nintendo Switch 2 has officially been announced this morning, January 16th, 2025. We got the name, the logo, a look at the new console itself, along with the new and upgraded Joy-Con controllers, a couple of other accessories, and our first look at what is probably the first actual game for the Switch 2, a brand new Mario Kart game. We've been playing Mario Kart 8 for over a decade now, with Mario Kart 8 debuting on the Wii U and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe being on the Switch. Is it finally time for 9? I think so. And even with all the leaks ahead of time, I'm still excited for this new console. But first, let's take a look at the console itself, and I'm basing this all on just what's been shown. While no specific text appears, we can definitely glean some information from what's been given. Right off the bat, we've got a bigger screen, with the screen bezels going much further than the original Switch. It's shown that there will be 2 USB-C ports, one on the bottom of the console, which is what we're familiar with. As in the Switch 1, this is where you would both insert it into the dock or plug in the AC adapter from. Now there is an additional port on the top of the unit that I think is an excellent idea. If you're charging this Switch from the bottom in handheld mode, you know that it's not the most comfortable to handle. Connecting the charge through the top port, a la or similar to the Steam Deck, makes it just easier to play with in handheld mode. Get that cable away from me. We also, of course, have the power button, volume rockers, headphone jack, and slot for the game cartridges. They're all once again on top of the console. And I think this is totally fine. I don't think they really needed to do anything with these in the first place, so they're fine where they are here. And on the back of the unit, we see the updated kickstand, which goes way back. This will add more viewing angles when in handheld mode. The original Switch kickstand is, in my opinion, not great. It's sort of just a small rectangular flap that feels like it could snap off any second. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. With the Switch OLED model, though, the kickstand goes the entire back length of the console and is much wider. With the Switch 2, it seems that they've taken out the chunk of space in the middle, so I'm wondering how sturdy this will actually be. Also on the back of the unit, we can see 2 little bumper nubs on either side, so hopefully those are there to, of course, prevent scratches or damage when playing it in handheld mode on a table with the Joy-Cons attached. Now, let's talk about these new Joy-Con, and I am very happy with this new and updated design. It seems like it's not only bigger, but has larger face buttons and joysticks. Now, something I noticed was the emphasis on the movement of the joysticks in the clip shown. One of my hopes is that the Switch 2 will finally have all-effect joysticks, eliminating the dreaded stick drift issue that plagues the original Switch. The biggest change here is that now instead of sliding the Joy-Con into place, with the Switch 2 the Joy-Con are magnetically attachable, with a simple snap onto either side. And from what's shown, it seems like we'll be able to disconnect the Joy-Con using an extra button on the back of the controller itself. There's also the addition of an extra button on the right Joy-Con, and while Nintendo has not gone into what this is, there have been some ideas swirling around. From leaks, it seems like that of a C button of sorts, and what I don't think it is an additional button or stick for like navigation or button pressing. If you're familiar with Nintendo hardware, you know that the C-Stick has been prominent in many Nintendo home consoles and handhelds. On the N64 controller, the directional buttons or camera buttons were placed on the right side. The GameCube controller moved this functionality to the bottom right of the controller, but this time turning it into a stick. 3DS XL came with a C-Stick of its own, although it was sort of more of a C-nub. So I don't think it's anything like that. I also don't think it has anything to do with game capture, because that function already exists. One rumor I've seen going around is that the C stands for cast, meaning that you can cast the screen or gameplay between the TV and console. And that has me thinking, what could that be used for? Well, so far on the Switch, we've gotten multiple ports of Wii U games and Nintendo DS games, one notable example being the Castlevania Dominus Collection that released last year. The collection combines 3 Nintendo DS Castlevania titles, and they decided to include all 3 screens on the same screen. And on the DS, this obviously isn't a problem because the form factor makes it easier to play, with the main gameplay and menus being allocated to specific screens on the DS. The Dominus Collection on Switch, while having multiple options for viewing the second and third screen, essentially just has it all on one. What the C button could do is pretty much do what the Wii U did, splitting the gameplay between the TV and the handheld. You press this button, the gameplay appears on the TV, and you have the menu options on the handhelds that you're holding, or the map, or whatever you want to do. This could potentially open the floodgates for the rest of these consoles' libraries, bringing over the remaining Wii U titles and porting a large amount of DS and 3DS titles, which sounds awesome. The other more notable feature being announced here is that the Joy-Con are now mice, or at least that's what we think, and it's sort of what it looks like. We see them attached to new Joy-Con wrist straps. On the original Switch, these would just sort of slide onto the Joy-Cons when unattached, essentially just making it easier to hold during multiplayer sessions. This, on the other hand, is entirely different as they start to race around like a mouse. The new sensor on the Joy-Con would indicate that this is the case, and this brings so much more potential to this new system. Imagine playing a game like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Civilization, or even Mario Maker, or even just in general more PC-centric games that only allow the use of a mouse and keyboard. I think this feature could be very cool if implemented well, whatever it ends up being. We also get a look at the new dock and the new Joy-Con grip, which, in my opinion, both look very nice. I honestly don't have much to say on either of these, so moving on. News that they did confirm in text were a few things. One, the Switch 2 will play Switch 2 exclusive games along with most original Switch games. They say certain games may not be fully supported, and I think that will be for a very small selection of titles. Ones that I think of are like Labo, Ring Fit Adventure, basically any game that requires the use and form factor of the Switch 1 Joy-Con. With Labo in particular, you have to insert the Joy-Con specifically into place, so a larger one of course wouldn't really fit in. But I'm fairly certain in belief that most, if not all, regular or normal Switch games will function as intended on the new system. The next keynote is that there will be a Nintendo Direct on April 2nd, 2025. This is where I'm assuming they'll announce a whole host of features for the system, giving us details about the release date, price, and the games that will be launching with it. And realistically, that's not a long time to wait for this information at all. The last bit of information they did officially announce was that the Switch 2 will have a World Tour showcase. Beginning in April, there will be many in-person hands-on events both around the globe and around the US, with New York from April 4th to the 6th, Los Angeles from April 11th to the 13th, and Dallas, Texas from April 25th to the 27th as the 3 US locations. According to the official site, registration is open from January 17th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Central, and 3 p.m. Eastern until January 26th at 11:59 p.m. local time for each event location. Registrants will be notified of the drawing results soon after. End quote. So you will need a Nintendo account to register, so if you don't and are hoping to attend one of these events, make sure to create one for free on Nintendo's official website, because they are announcing this as a lottery system, so not everyone's going to get the chance to go. The dates of these start in New York on the first week of April and end in Seoul, Korea on June 1st. I'm sure registration for these events will be chaotic, as I will attempt myself to register for the Dallas event. Of course, I do have some questions. Importantly, when will this thing release and how much will it cost? Well, for the launch date, I see it a couple of ways. I think the fact that the final day of the hands-on event being June 1st, I don't think they'll release as quickly as like the end of June. Bear in mind, they totally could and announce something like the end of June at the April 2nd Direct. I think if it's not June, July, or August, or sometime in the summer months, then it seems more realistic to get this thing in the fall going into the holiday season. And then regarding the price, I think $400 is probably the most realistic. It's $100 more than the original Switch released, so that makes sense to me. I have literally no other input into how much that'll cost. I'm buying this regardless, so the cost to me, personally, doesn't really matter. Before I talk about Mario Kart, I do have a concern, and that's with the connections on either side of the console. So one is blue, one is orange. As shown, the external sides of the Joy-Con matches the interior sides of the console unit. So what does that mean for colored Joy-Con? Will there only be blue and orange? So now let's discuss the brief teaser for the next main Mario Kart game. And this is for sure a new game based on a few key details. First, we've got a brand new course, the Mario Brothers Circuit, which seems to be inspired by a Western Route 66 sort of area, complete with companies seen like the Fireflower gas station, Luigi Tires, and Yoshi's Burger Stand. Right at the beginning of the teaser, we see spots for 24 racers. This is a huge change, signaling the enhanced power of this new console. Mario Kart 8 had a total of 12 racers on a course at one time. And for the characters shown so far, we see Yoshi, Bowser, Peach, Mario, Rosalina, Daisy, Donkey Kong, Wario, and 2 other characters towards the bottom that I can't really make out. One kind of looks like a Koopa Troopa, but completely unsure about the other one. We don't really get any other angles of that racer. And to be honest, this all looks really good. The more I look at this footage, the more I get a sense for what this game might ultimately be. So for one, the map and course itself looks massive, and we've been no stranger to big Mario Kart courses, but I think this might be a potential indication that the series is going much bigger. And by that I mean open world. There are a couple of things that lead me to this theory. Let's take a look at the vehicles being used, particularly by Rosalina, who appears to be driving a snowmobile of sorts, and Bowser, who appears to be driving an ATV adjacent, made notably by the thick tires. Could this mean that we're going more off-road? Then with that, would different vehicles maybe be used for different missions depending on where you are in the world? Could this also mean that, for instance, in snow-themed courses, will weather and snow have an effect on the vehicles? I can totally imagine a Forza Horizon level leap forward for the Mario Kart franchise, using what works with standard racing, but at the same time injecting this new entry with a single-player open-world component. The other thing that is kind of visible is the warbling item beneath Yoshi's burger stand or burger restaurant. Is this item a new consumable to be used, say, during the race? Or is this item more intended as a collectible? I can picture these being scattered across the game maps, all with different fun, inventive ways of getting to them, if that's the case. And something else I noticed was that the toads on the track all have cameras, so maybe there might be a camera replay function or something similar to that. The last thing I'll mention is that the rocks in the background are shaped like mushrooms. That's a nice touch. So that about wraps up the first official announcement for the Nintendo Switch 2. I know that we're working with limited details here, but they have provided a ton for us to speculate and ponder in the coming weeks and months. And since this is now publicly known, I bet that we'll hear a lot more about this sooner rather than later. What are my overall thoughts? I'm stoked. From what we've seen, this is everything I've wanted in a Switch successor, so I'm hoping that the games will truly follow up with even more amazing experiences. This has been an episode of Ryan's Game Quest. Thank you. Take care.